Que lo que miente, grand evening, great warriors. What's good, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to today's motivational message. I just wanted to remind everyone who decides to listen to this at some point in time that you are the author of your story. It may sound cliche, but a lot of the cliches that you hear are true. That's probably why they are so common. But yes, you are the author of your story. And I specifically wanted to remind myself, because I'm definitely applying what I'm talking about today and in a lot of these messages to myself. But I also wanted to remind my listeners and the people who have written emails to me that your story does not have to end the way that it begins. When I say that, I don't mean that you should, be counting down the days to your demise or, that you should be planning for your death. Of course not. But just remember that however your life began and however you may have suffered throughout your upbringing is not a reflection of how you will go throughout the rest of your life, or at least it does not have to be. This video is brought to you by the poetry collection Things I Never Said by Starlenie Vondora. You can purchase your copy of the profound inspirational poetry collection today at www.vondoragoods.com or www.amazon.com. You are the author of your story. You have the power and you have the control that allows you to respond to what happens to you and what happens around you differently, especially if you would like to affect change in your own pathology or break a generational curse, for example. And I think that it's important to remind yourself that you have that power, especially in those moments where you feel very hopeless or helpless or powerless, or maybe you cannot see beyond the next hour because you've been in a situation that is unpleasant or, not really the best or the most ideal situation for whoever you are, however young you are, and you cannot see an end in sight. And I'm going to share a little personal anecdote just so that you can resonate more with what I'm saying, and then also so that I can connect the other things that I wanted to say to you and probably make it easier for you to see yourself in the message. So recently, I have been working tirelessly on translating my poetry collection called Things I Never Said. Yes, wooty woot, Things I Never Said is available. You can go to my website, vondoragoods.com, or you can go to amazon.com and you can purchase it in English. And pretty soon you will be able to purchase Things I Never Said in a variety of languages like Korean, Japanese, Hebrew, Arabic, of course, Spanish and Haitian Creole for my people, of course, French and Polish, and you name it, a variety of languages. Romanian is the one that I was recently working on. But yes, you'll be able to purchase the poetry collection in whatever language you would like, and I'm super excited for that. I've been working a lot on that, hence why I've not really been present on the platforms, but the story connects to that, so that's also why I decided to bring this up. Thank you for supporting Vondora Goods digital content, brought to you by Starlenie Vondora. To learn more about the Things I Never Said poetry collection and podcasts, be sure to read the description below. To continue your support, you can submit your advice, questions, and suggestions using the link in the description. You can also use the Google Form link or send me an email to request access to the Vondora Goods Discord group. Thank you in advance for all monetary contributions that you make to Vondora Goods via the Venmo and Cash App links in the description below. So the other day, I was translating one of my poems to Romanian, right? And I just happened to look at a line that I needed to cross translate several times so that it made sense in Romanian. And the line was from a poem called Dealing with Guilt. And Dealing with Guilt is a poem that I actually wrote my senior year, and I wrote it during my time on the school slam poetry team. For those of you who don't know and who haven't seen my other videos where I briefly mentioned it, I was a part of my high school slam poetry team for 2 years, and we used to just perform against other schools at these bouts. Bouts are essentially competitions, and it's all in fun, but you do receive a score from judges, and there is a winner, but the prize and the point is the poetry, not the actual scoring system. But I wrote Dealing with Guilt, and that was going to be my piece to perform at every competition. And every time I performed it, I began to sob. And by the time I stepped off the stage, I just began running essentially to the bathroom so that I could cry my eyes out. And I didn't even recognize that pattern in myself to be as telling as it was right away. I knew that I was talking about stuff that was really sad, but I didn't understand the significance of my response to letting out those really heavy emotions. And what I learned over time, especially as we became closer and closer to finals, is that the poem, or my response to all of the things I mentioned in the poem, was as severe as it was because I had suppressed my emotions for years. I suppressed so much pain, and then in like 3 minutes, I was on a stage talking about all of this stuff, and I had the challenge of condensing it to a 3-minute poem. And then there was the scoring and the pressure, and it was just a lot. It was overwhelming. It was fun, but it was overwhelming, and it was very personal, and I chose to be so transparent. Nobody made me. I just am a transparent person, obviously. And I think what happened is that for the first time, I opened up Pandora's box, and I had no idea what to expect from myself once I stood in front of a group of people and said, these things happened to me. This is how I'm hurting. This is the guilt that I am dealing with, even though I left. So what I learned about myself in that experience was that I had a lot of healing to do. And that is sort of what inspired me to write my poetry collection, Things I Never Said. I especially wanted to write it by the time the year that I graduated from high school was over. So that's when I began writing it. I graduated from high school and I began writing it when I went off to university, and I published it like 8 months later in 2018. And the poem Dealing with Guilt has a line about my mother beating me until I pissed myself. So when I tell you, like, it was a very heavy poem, it really was, because just imagine that. Like, imagine the embarrassment and the pain that one would have to go through to be beaten so severely that your body wants to relieve itself, and you want to, like, not that you want to urinate on yourself, but you're overwhelmed by the lashes that your body feels like it's about to pee if you do not get to the toilet. That's what I experienced when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. That is what I experienced when I was a little girl. And of course, like, it was very painful. It was very brutal, and it was very embarrassing. And I got to a point where I used to like beg my mom. I would just say, please, like, please stop. Like, I'll come back and you can finish. I swear I'll come back. I just need to use the restroom, because I didn't want to pee on myself, of course. Like, I knew that we didn't have enough money to go to the laundromat. So I had to hand wash my clothing, and the chances of my clothing smelling like mildew were high. So, I had a lot of foresight even as a child, and I thought these things through. So I would just plead with her and tell her, like, I'll come back and she can finish her beating. Just, let me go relieve myself, please. And most of the time she did not oblige. Most of the time she just kept, hitting me because she was consumed by whatever it was that caused her to be that way towards me. But, I basically say all that to say, when I translated that poem the other day and I read that line, I was so overwhelmed with emotion. I totally forgot, not about that experience, but I forgot the pain, and I forgot the way that, the suffering that I experienced during that time used to consume me. And it was hard for me to laugh about anything when I was a kid. It was hard for me, especially at home, to smile or to experience any joy. At school, people who knew me knew I was so goofy and so funny. But if they told one of my siblings that I was so goofy and funny, my siblings would probably say, I don't think we're talking about the same girl, because they never saw any of that in me. I was like dead inside when I was in school. I mean, when I was at home, because of everything that I experienced and the amount of trauma that I had continued to suppress from my time as a foster child and throughout my time living with my birth parents. So when I translated that line in the entire poem the other day, it just dawned on me that I really am so far from who I was then. In a lot of ways, I am the same spirit and the same person, but my life is remarkably different, and my understanding of myself and what I deserve and what I should experience from people and what I should not ever accept from people is very different. And I just had, a revelations moment. I had a full circle moment. And I went from feeling overwhelmed with the sadness that that was once my reality to, feeling so glad that my story is turning out to be a lot better than it was. Sure, I'm not a wealthy person by any means. I'm still like a normal citizen in this world. Like, I'm not saying that, I gained a superpower or I gained an immense amount of wealth and all that kind of stuff that people glamorize and romanticize, right? I don't live in a mansion or anything like that. But my understanding of myself and my purpose in life is far greater than it was when I was a child, not expecting to live past 16, because my mother used to literally look at me and threaten to go to jail for killing me. And if she wasn't threatening to go to jail for killing me, she was choking me out and doing really violent things to me. And I just never knew when my last day would come. I never knew if she was going to call me to the room and like choke me out or stomp on my head and other things that she had done previously. So to not be in any relationship or in proximity to people who treat me like that is such a blessing. To have the power and the control to say that you are not even permitted to come near me is a blessing. And I'm so grateful that I understand myself and my power and my purpose just a little bit more. I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the clarity and the revelations that I have gained throughout this time, especially during this time of separation from all of that toxicity. So I just wanted to throw that out there for the people who are in a situation, especially those who write to me about their situations. I just want you to consider that everything is temporary, and I'll expound on that in a different motivational message. But for this one, I just wanted to remind you that you are in control of your story. You have the ability to define yourself and your life story. You say who you are, and you control what you tolerate and what you accept from people. And it is going to require that you make some changes. I had to get up and I had to walk away. And I was 15. I had no idea what life was going to look like for me, but I knew that once I finally started to work, I could finally purchase new clothing for myself and school supplies and be the parent that I needed when I was a kid. But I also knew that my parents were going to take every single check that I made, and my boss could only hold my checks for me for so long before I needed to cash them. So I decided to myself that I was just going to have to go live in a shelter. And, fortunately, she, as in my boss, allowed me to stay with her. But at 15, I made my mind up and said I'd rather live in a shelter and deal with whatever that looked like than to live in the situation where I'm dying. I'm living every day to die, essentially. And that's what my life literally looked like. It's not what I told myself, that's what it was. And that's no way to live. That's simply being alive. That's not even living. So I made some choices, and to this day, I have to reroute. I reroute like nobody's business. Call me Waze, call me Google Maps, call me whomever. I don't care. But if there's one thing I will do, it is reroute. That is what I am able to do. That is what you have to do in life. Take the risks. Jump off the cliff. I will take your hand and jump with you. Doesn't even matter if you know how to swim. I have an immense amount of faith, I'll tell you that, because there have been many times where I didn't know what tomorrow would look like for me. I don't even know what tonight is going to look like for me. I'm just being honest. I don't even know. But my faith keeps me going, that's for sure. But remember the scripture or the quote that says, faith without works is dead. You can't just be faithful. You can't just sit there and say, she won't try to choke me out tonight. You have to be willing to get up and do some things and be willing to be uncomfortable, but for the right reasons, not for the wrong people and the wrong motives. Be willing to be in a shelter, but have control over your life. Don't be willing to go live on the street and prostitute yourself. That's ridiculous. You're literally only going to invite more demons into your life. So you have to be careful. You have to be logical. You have to move rationally, of course. But you have to take control over your life. Because you are writing the story. You cannot control what happens to you. You cannot control what people do to you. But you control what you accept. And people do things to you that you allow them to do. People do things to you that you accept. People put their hands on you and they verbally accost you when they see you're not going to do anything in return. It was a totally different story for me when the last time my mother put hands on me, which was the day that I left, and she told me to get out of the house. I said, call the police. Llama la policía. I said, call the police, girl. And she said, excuse me. She said, oh, está. She said, what did you just say? And she called my father. She couldn't believe me. She couldn't believe it because she never saw that energy in me. She didn't know what to do. And I know she never expected me to leave. I know that no one ever expected me to thrive. No one ever expected me to leave. Nobody ever expected me to take care of myself. And that's sad, isn't it? People really expect you to just sit there and take the crap that they throw at you. Like, people really think that you are here to be their punching bag. But understand that if you show them that that's what you're willing to be, that's what they will make you. This video is brought to you by the poetry collection Things I Never Said by Starlenie Vondora. You can purchase your copy of the profound inspirational poetry collection today at www.vondoragoods.com or www.amazon.com. And you got to recognize that's so wrong. Other people don't get to decide who you are in this life. They can believe what they want to, but they don't get to decide that you are a punching bag. You decide if you are the punching bag. And if you don't want to be the punching bag, then that's when you remove yourself from the equation. You don't have to punch back because then you're just as foul as them. You don't have to punch back. You just have to be very smart. You have to protect yourself, be wise. And you have to make sure that you move like somebody who values her life. Don't do things that diminish the value of your life. Don't stoop low. Aim high and jump even higher. That's what I do. Aim high, but jump even higher. Now, I don't want to make this too long, but I just wanted to leave you with that and say, you are the author of your story. Remember, you're writing your story page by page every single day. Write a really good one. Write a wonderful, profound story. That's what you're here to do. And remember to refer back to your writing to aid in your self-reflection. You never know, a few years from now, you might look back at something you wrote, whether you publish it or not, whether it's just a journal entry or just some notes that you wrote down. You never know how inspired you'll become by your own self when you look back at where you were a few years ago or a few months ago and you see the progress that you have made recently. You'll see that you are remarkable. You are a work in progress, but you are remarkable. Act like it. And I would say on that note, thank you so much for listening. Tata mi amores, take care.
Gonna give you this mic back. But what I'm gonna say to the ladies that been told that you cannot have, you Tell the devil you's a liar.